The three no votes. Let's talk about the three. Because voting no is meaningfully different from abstaining. Abstaining is we don't want to pay and we rather not say that out loud. Voting no is we actively oppose this resolution and we are willing to stand in front of 193 nations and say so. That takes a particular kind of political calculus. Let's look at each one. The United States. The U.S. Deputy Ambassador stated that America does not acknowledge a legal entitlement to reparations for historical injustices that were not deemed illegal under international law at the time they took place. I want to be direct about that. What that argument actually is. It is an argument that the slave trade was legal when it happened, and therefore no obligation flows from it. It is the legal equivalent of saying, we can't be held to a standard that didn't exist yet, which is a coherent legal positioning in a narrow technical sense. If you ignore that the people being enslaved didn't get to vote on the legality of their enslavement at the time. But here's what this vote is actually about. At the U.S. level, it's not about legal philosophy. The financial exposure is real. Estimates of U.S. reparations liability range from $14 trillion on the conservative end to $97 trillion on the high end, depending on the methodology.
Afro-descendant Ali, yeah, we writing history. Afro-descendant Ali for the whole world to see. Oh yeah.
Multiple American cities already have a active reparation program. Several states have pending legislation. A UN resolution declaring slavery a crime against humanity doesn't create automatic legal liability, but it hands domestic litigants a moral and international foundation to build on in US courts and in international arbitration bodies. Washington knows this. They voted no to preemptively close that door. But here's the consequence they apparently didn't fully price in. The United States just told 1.5 billion Africans and the entire African diaspora, roughly 200 million people across the Americas, the Caribbean, and Europe, who have direct ancestral connection to this history, that it stands against them on the most fundamental question of historical justice. That statement will be quoted in African parliaments, in the Caribbean courts, and in every diplomatic negotiation where the U.S. tries to claim moral leadership for the next decade. You don't get to vote no on the question and this foundational concern and then turn around and claim the moral high ground on anything. This is not a one news cycle event. This is a permanent entry in the diplomatic record. Israel. Israel voted with the United States and Argentina and issued no meaningful separate statement. The vote alignment is consistent with Netanyahu's government track record, roughly 85% alignment with the U.S. in UN General Assembly votes, which reflects the structural dependency of Israeli security architecture on American military and diplomatic support. But there is a second layer here that is analytically important. If the international community normalizes the principle that reparations for historical crimes against humanity are legitimate legal and moral expectation, the precedent does not only apply to Africans' case, it creates an opening for every ongoing and unresolved historical crime to be relitigated in international forums. Israel, with active ICJ proceedings and an unresolved situation in Gaza and the Palestinian territories, has a direct institutional interest in ensuring that principle does not gain traction. This vote is, in part, Israel voting against the precedent, not just the resolution. Argentina. Argentina, under Milei, is the ideological mirror of the current U.S. administration. Libertarian economics, dismissive of collective historical responsibility, aligned with Western financial institutions, including a $44 billion IMF debt that makes any rupture with Washington financially catastrophic. There is also domestic dimensions to this, here that almost never gets discussed in international coverage. Argentina has an Afro-Argentine population estimated at up to 4% of the country, descendants of enslaved Africans who were brought to the Rio de la Plata region during the colonial period. That community has been systematically erased from Argentine national identity. The official consensus barely counts them. Argentine history books barely acknowledge them. The no vote is entirely consistent with that erasure, performed now at the international level in the full view of the United Nations. 3 countries, 1 ideological orbit, 0 willingness to be held accountable by multilateral institutions for anything. This is the shape of the coalition that stood against 123 nations on March 25th.